So this was quite literally my introduction to Star Baby. A great friend, a fantastic tactician, a wonderful aviator through and through, and about the most determined guy you'll ever meet. And so I was in the shop that was, we didn't have a formal name, but we called ourselves the weapons prototypers. So we had about a dozen folks, a couple engineers, a couple program managers, a couple we had a loggy, we had a couple bomb experts, we had financial management, we had, we call it an integrated product team. We had everybody we needed, including a contracting officer, to execute weapons prototyping experiments. So the whole build it and they will come sort of environment where we show the warfighter, hey, if you bought this weapon, this is what you could do with it. As opposed to the warfighter coming to you and say, I need a weapon that'll do this. You flip it on its head and say, I have a weapon that'll do that. How could you use it? That kind of thing. And since I was a foreign weapons guy, I already knew how I would use it. So my projects were a bit more relevant than average. So at least I thought so. So Star Baby comes to me out of the Pentagon and says, the current counter-maritime strategy in the Navy was heavily reliant on the Quickstrike mine series if mining was going to be part of the campaign. Now, we haven't mined since, I think, Haipong. So it's been quite a long time since we physically mined someplace. But the technology that we had at the time, when I was working with Star Baby, reached back to that era. You had 500, 1,000, and 2,000 pound general purpose bombs that were released a few hundred feet off the water by bombers with a parachute. And the parachute would just let them fall into the water gently. And then they would have to fly kind of a pattern over wherever the area you're trying to mine, and then set them down and fly away. And in modern warfare, that's an entirely unsurvivable mission. You're not going to hang out in the enemy's harbor flying raster patterns at 500 feet and then leave. So we were trying to find a way to use the Quickstrike technology, which they replaced the conventional fusing mechanisms that we put on a regular general purpose bomb, and use maritime components. So there's a boat detector, there's a water detector, there's a conventional fuse, and there's a timer so that you can set it when you release the bomb. You can have it disable itself after a certain amount of time, so you don't have to go minesweeping yourself.
Grace, can I just interrupt you really quickly? Just explain, because I don't really understand how the quick strike works. So a mine traditionally, doesn't that sort of bob under the surface a little bit, and then so do these sit on the seabed?
They're on the bottom. Yep.
Okay.
So these are shallow water activities.
Okay.
100 feet or less, maybe. I'm not a mine guy, so I don't know the exact distance. Yeah, you're not going to put mines in the Marianas Trench and have any impact on anybody going over the top of them. So yeah, the World War II mines were the floating buoys.
Yeah.
But today modern mines sit on the bottom.
Okay.
And they know when the boat comes across for various ways, and then that triggers them. So making this survivable, getting some kind of standoff was our experiment. What could we do? So the first part of that was the accuracy of where you place the mines with the parachute was lousy. Because in that X hundred feet coming down on the bomber, under the parachute, the wind carries them around. They get in the water. The parachute may or may not come off. If it's not a lake, it has some sort of current going through it. So the parachute is going to be a part of that equation and pull the mine around with the current until it hits the bottom. So you kind of don't really know where they ended up. So you got to put lots of them down. You don't really know where they end up. So if you want to clear the area later in peacetime, you got to send divers down to figure it out or something. I mean, it's really a tough mission. So the first attribute we're looking for is precision laydown instead of more or less random from a parachute. We wanted medium altitude versus a few hundred feet, so that the airplane wasn't immediately a threat in the harbor, and we want standoff. So, how far away can we do these things? And, all of those attributes became available with JDAM.
Hmm.
So JDAM, you can pre-program the coordinates. So I want to go right there, and by the time we did this, JDAM was super mature. I don't know what the actual JDAM CEP is, but in a non GPS jamming environment, it's going to go where you tell it to. Um, you can do lots of them because JDAMs can go on the rotaries on the bombers, or you can hang them on the B-52. You can hang them on this thing called the Heavy Store Adapter Beam, which is basically a giant bomb rack you can hang on the on the wing of the airplane. You can hang, I don't know, X-15s, stuff like that. So you can hang anything you want on the outside of B-52. So volume is not an issue. So whatever you come up with, you can stick it on a B-52 for the experiment. So now we need standoff. Well, the Israelis had already designed and built a wing kit for the 2,000-pound bomb family, a glide wing kit. I don't know if they ever fielded it within their forces, but they worked with Boeing to build it, so it existed. We didn't have to invent a wing kit. We just had to go buy some. There was some difference. I may have it backwards. The Israeli version was built on the 109 bomb body, and we were going to use the 2,000-pound general purpose, or vice versa. I forget how it worked, but so we couldn't just take the Israeli one and use it as is. We had to work with Boeing, but a wing kit existed. You have to build the wing kit. There's one on the planet, so we used it. So it was a combination of using the JDAM tail kit, reprogramming the guidance package for JDAM to accommodate the glide portion of the delivery, making the batteries last a lot longer because now this got to glide for X amount of minutes versus maybe 1 minute time of flight from medium altitude. And then the first discovery we made was when the weapons come into the water via parachute. The impact's velocity is a couple hundred feet per second, maybe 300 feet per second. The nose part of the Quickstrike mine was conceived specifically for that. So the water pressure going through the nose and that was well understood. And there was a piece of that we learned along the way. If you were to have these Quickstrike mines on the deck of the ship, and the ship caught a big wave and it kind of tipped and these things rolled off and fell into the water, the ship would not mine itself because the water pressure going through the nose of the weapon wasn't enough to arm it.
Okay.
So they would just be duds. But coming in at 300 or 400 feet per second on the parachute, that's plenty of water pressure to arm it. So the water detector was part of the arming sequence. So the difference when you hit it off a JDAM, from medium altitude, a JDAM would hit the surface roughly 1,000 feet per second. So the first ones we sent out just totally flooded the water detector, just blew it apart. So it just totally malfunctioned. It was trashed. So we had to redesign the water detector to handle 1,000 feet per second impact velocities.
Wow.
And then we discovered that in a general purpose bomb, where the nose fuse screws into the front, it's an open cavity from there into the weapon where the weapon fill is, where the explosive fill is. You better seal that really, really good when you have water coming in at 1,000 feet per second. You get a lot of water in your explosive fill, which we did. So we had to cherry pick out 2,000-pound bomb bodies out of the bomb dump that were not rusty, pristine, clean them, and seal the fuse, the nose mechanism, unusually well to make sure water didn't get into the explosive fill. So that was lesson number 2. Lesson number 3 was the behavior of the weapon once it hits the water is predictable with, you've probably heard of math models called CFD, computational fluid dynamics. There's a similar version of that for water, hydrodynamics. So the modelers told us, yeah, if you let these things hit the water the way they are going to go straight to the bottom and really not slow down. So you've got to figure out what that means to you. So we went to go figure that out, and we got a video back. I think there was a Navy experiment early on where they abandoned using JDAM because of this reason. The video is I wish I could find it. It was fantastic. So it's in a lake, and they had a bunch of telephone poles that were going to in the lake that were the target. I want the bomb to go here, and of course JDAM did, and it goes in, and And okay, JDAM did what it was supposed to do. And then what seems like 4 or 5 seconds later, you see the weapon coming out of the water, and it's banana shaped, it's bent and tumbling,
Wow.
and and then it lands on the data link van on the range, and the picture goes blank. The only piece of equipment on the entire range this thing lands on. But what they determined was it went into the water crazy fast, straight to the bottom, got into the mud. The mud turned the weapon, had plenty of energy left at this point, so it came out of the water, but it was bent. So now, yeah, going straight to the bottom is bad. It was not going to give us the I put it on the bottom where I wanted it answer that we were looking for. So we tried to figure out how we would, change that behavior once we got it into the water. And there were a whole bunch of crazy ideas floating around, but we settled on a solution that was quite literally tested in the Panarisi backyard weapons test facility, underwater test facility. So I have a big pool in my backyard, and we were trying different things. And I have these. I don't know if they're common in the UK, but in America, there's lots of little pool toys for the kids, and one of them looks a little bit like an American football, but it has a little stick on the end of it with some fins, so like a baby torpedo
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah.
And you could be on opposite ends of the pool, and you could play kind of underwater hockey and throw it, and it would go straight. It would had some mass to it, so you try to get it past the kid on the other side of the pool. So that was our game. So we knew that if we dropped this thing into our pool, it would go where we told it. So we put a little ramp on the side of my pool, and put this thing in the water and underwater camera, and sure enough, it goes straight to the bottom, bounced off the bottom, and okay, that's behaving just like the JDAM did. So how can we change this? And the guys that did the code said, if you can impart, this isn't the right term, but let's call it angle of attack. If you can get it to hit the water crooked, it'll behave completely differently, because when it hits the water, this analogy is completely wrong, but it might help. If you put a straw in a glass of water and you look at it from the side, the straw looks like it's displaced,
Hmm.
because the density of the water is different than the density of the air, so the light goes through it differently, and the straw looks funny. Same thing happens aerodynamically / hydrodynamically. The bomb is behaving a certain way in the air, hits the water, the density is completely different. It's going to follow completely different rules. So if you can get it to hit the water crooked, what the hydro code predicted was that it would essentially stall the weapon, and the water would literally boil around the front of the weapon because the pressure differences were so high, and it would shove the nose of the weapon up. It would basically stall, and then it would maple leaf down to the bottom. So they said, find a way to get the weapon to hit the water crooked, and you'll be fine. So I quite literally took a piece of rubber tube, taped it to the bottom of my little ramp, put the torpedo down the ramp with the camera, and when the torpedo hit the little rubber tube, it dislodged it off the ramp a little bit, so it hit the water at about a 10-degree angle. And no kidding, as soon as it hit the water, it swapped ends and settled to the bottom.
Wow.
So, we're not going to do this. Aha, eureka, we have the answer. So now how do you get the JDAM, which is programmed from day one to hit whatever it's hitting with no angle at all? Because the last thing you want is the weapon, especially on a penetrator weapon, to be a little bit crooked as it impacts, because you'll break the case open, you won't get the impact penetration you want, and that sort of thing. So we worked with the Boeing engineers and how we're going to do this, and it was going to be impossible. And one of the guys on the team had the eureka moment. And this is why when you have weapons experts on your team, you can really do some pretty cool things. And this guy was a total brainiac. Um, the smartest weapons guy I've ever known in my life. He said, Greeks, this is no problem. Tell the JDAM that the target is 5,000 feet underwater. I'm like, okay, why do you want to do that? He goes, because while the JDAM is en route, it's always correcting its position. At some time before impact, it says enough of that and streamlines its fins, and it goes straight. So let's hit the water in the guidance mode, not in the streamline mode, and we're golden. And if we really care about the exact impact point, JDAM, you can program an impact angle. I want a 40-degree impact angle, whatever number you want. So we just do the math. If we want the weapon to be on the bottom at this point, then we do 40-degree impact angle, do the math, and we can program it to hit this point and tell it to hit this point on the ground, knowing it'll be this point on top of the water, all predictable. You can calculate it ahead of time. Off we go. So that became the answer. And sure enough, it worked like a champ. We did a few of them out in the Gulf, and the bombs just immediately upended themselves and settled down to the bottom. So we have the answer. So the final exercise was we took 8 weapons out to Guam, and we found an area in the Pacific that had like there's no baseball in Europe, but we would call it pitcher's mound in the base, so it wasn't very deep and easy to get to. And we took our B-52 out there, let all 8 of them go, and we put all of them in about 100-foot circle.
Really? Wow.
So it was
incredible,
wildly successful. And that whole process we funded under a Department of War project called a JCTD, a Joint Capability Technology Demonstration. So the DoD holds dollars aside for bright ideas that have joint application. And there's nothing more joint than the Air Force delivering Navy mines. So we got the dollars to do the experiment from the JCT office. We took it from idea all the way through implementation, even to the point where the Navy office that buys the existing Quickstrike mines were on board with the new. They did the redesign of the water detector so that the pressure wasn't going to. They did the redesign of the ceiling so that the water wouldn't get into the bombs. They were our joint partners the entire way, and to the point where after our last demonstration of 8 weapons, they made the quote fielding decision, and now they're in the Navy fleet. And through that process, our team. Wow, right here. Even though I had that there, this was not a plant. This was the award from the Department of Defense for the JCTD of the year.
Wow.
So Star Baby put us on that path, and that was our solution. The Quickstrike ER mine. And we were so bummed when we were done that Air Combat Command didn't immediately jump on it and go, oh, we're going to use that for JDAM Glide. Didn't happen.
Why not?
Don't know. And to my knowledge, they still haven't done it. The Aussies have fielded the 500-pound Glide JDAM. It's been around for a long time. That was where we got the idea that you could do a Glide JDAM. But we just didn't want to do a 500-pound mine because that's good for 20 feet of water. So that project's done. My team gets disbanded, and it's a whole other story. But that engineer went back to the research lab and wanted to carry that mission forward because there was more to be done. Because we knew the behavior of the weapon going through the water was very predictable, and we knew that modern counter-maritime strategies were not hit the boat, but to create a vacuum under the ship for it to fall into, which is exactly what a mine does. Mine is under, it's well under it. It removes the water from around the ship, and the ship falls into it. So he said, let's get really close to the ship and do this. So he modified that weapon with a boat detector, just for the concept demonstration, just an optical sensor that you tell it, hey, the boat's about over there. You get a hammer. Okay, I see the boat, and now it self-steers towards the boat. And then you do math to say, I want to pick an angle. I want to get 100 feet under the boat. And so you do the math at this angle, 100 feet, Pythagorean theorem, whatever you want to do. And then you just put a timer on it. Hit the water, count 200 milliseconds, whatever number ends up it, and then go bang, and it'll be under the boat. And if you look up QUICKSINK on Google, you'll see the 1-minute video of the final demonstration of the QUICKSINK experiment. And sure enough, one 2,000 pounder takes out a very large vessel. It hits. You see the splash somewhere to the side of the boat. A couple seconds later, you see the water start coming up under the boat, and the boat literally rises, falls, and goes to the bottom. The standoff is there already with the long range wings that we got from the Israelis, so you can get easy 50 miles of standoff. The seeker is trivial; it's an optical seeker. Like I said, boats don't hide, so you could do it infrared if you want to do it at night. They just did optical because it was cheap. The development is really converting the optical image into steering commands. Once you have that, the source of the image doesn't matter. It can be RF, it can be IR, it can be combination, doesn't matter. The hard part was taking, okay, the boat's over here in my image. How do I steer the weapon to get it in the middle? That's the algorithms that the seeker has to do. Once those algorithms are done, it doesn't matter what the source of that image is. So that'll be fielded, and that takes care of moving boats because it'll steer towards, boats don't go that fast. So pick a number, 10, 20 knots. You're not going to outrun a weapon going 1,000 feet per second.
Yeah.
So that's now in the stages of, how do we get that into the fleet?
If you enjoyed this clip and want more, you can go to 10percenttrue.com, hit subscribe, and get early ad-free access to all my content. Appreciate your support.